Sincerity is the foundation upon which every act of worship stands, and secret worship is one of the most powerful ways to protect and purify that sincerity. When a believer performs an act of worship away from the eyes of people, the heart begins to change in a profound way. There is no audience to impress, no praise to expect, and no reputation to build. The only purpose that remains is to seek the pleasure of Allah. In a world where people constantly seek validation through recognition, likes, applause, and approval, secret worship becomes an act of spiritual freedom. It liberates the soul from dependence on people and reconnects it entirely with the Creator. Human beings naturally desire appreciation. Even good deeds can slowly become influenced by the need to be noticed. A person may begin praying longer when others are watching, speak more about charity than actually giving it, or share acts of kindness hoping for admiration. These subtle feelings can enter the heart without realization. Secret worship acts like a shield that protects faith from these hidden diseases of the heart. When a person wakes up in the darkness of the night to pray while everyone else sleeps, there is no worldly benefit attached to that action. No one will praise them, no one will congratulate them, and no one may ever know. That moment becomes purely for Allah. Sincerity grows when the believer learns to value Allah's knowledge above people's opinions. The heart slowly understands that being seen by Allah is more valuable than being seen by the world. A single tear shed in private out of fear, gratitude, or love for Allah carries a weight far greater than public displays of worship. This realization transforms worship from routine actions into deeply meaningful experiences. The believer stops asking, "Who noticed what I did?" and begins asking, "Did Allah accept it?" Secret worship also trains the heart to remain consistent. Public acts of worship sometimes fluctuate depending on social environments. A person may feel motivated in gatherings, mosques, or religious events but struggle when alone. Hidden worship removes this dependence on external motivation. When someone develops the habit of praying voluntary prayers alone, they are practicing a form of meditation or mindfulness. Making silent dua during daily routines or giving charity without revealing their identity, their faith becomes self-sustaining. They learn to worship Allah not because others inspire them, but because their heart genuinely longs for closeness to Him. There is a unique sweetness found in worship that no one else knows about. It becomes a personal secret between the servant and Allah. Scholars often described hidden deeds as spiritual treasures stored for the day of judgment. These deeds are untouched by pride, protected from envy, and safe from corruption because they were never exposed to public attention. The believer begins to cherish these moments deeply, guarding them like precious jewels. Even speaking about them feels uncomfortable because their value lies in their secrecy. Another powerful aspect of secret worship is how it humbles the soul. When people praise us, the ego grows quietly. But when good deeds remain hidden, humility naturally develops. The believer recognizes their own weaknesses, their need for mercy, and their dependence on Allah. They understand that acceptance is never guaranteed, no matter how many good actions they perform. This humility leads to more sincere repentance, more heartfelt supplication, and a softer heart toward others. Secret worship also reshapes intention in everyday life. Simple actions begin transforming into acts of worship when done sincerely for Allah alone. Helping someone quietly, forgiving without announcing it, making dua for others without telling them, or giving support anonymously all strengthen sincerity. The believer learns that the most beloved deeds are not always the most visible ones. Sometimes the smallest hidden action carries immense spiritual weight because it was performed solely for Allah. One of the greatest spiritual benefits of hidden worship is the sense of peace it brings. When a person no longer seeks validation from people, they are freed from disappointment when recognition does not come. Their happiness no longer depends on appreciation or acknowledgement. Instead, contentment grows from knowing that Allah sees every effort, every sacrifice, and every silent struggle. This awareness brings tranquility to the heart because divine recognition never fails. Secret worship also strengthens trust in Allah. The believer performs good deeds without expecting immediate worldly results. They give charity secretly without waiting for thanks. They pray privately without seeking admiration. Over time, they develop certainty that Allah rewards even what remains unseen. This trust deepens faith and builds patience, allowing the believer to continue doing good regardless of external outcomes. The practice of hidden worship reflects true love for Allah. Love is proven most sincerely when actions are performed without witnesses. Just as genuine affection between people is often expressed through private gestures rather than public displays, sincere devotion to Allah thrives in secrecy. The believer chooses moments alone with Allah, not out of obligation but out of longing. These moments become sources of spiritual nourishment that sustain faith throughout daily challenges. Secret worship also prepares the believer for accountability before Allah. On the day when intentions will be exposed and deeds will be weighed, hidden acts of sincerity may become the greatest source of salvation. Deeds performed only for Allah remain protected from hypocrisy because they were never tied to human approval. The believer understands that while people may forget or never know their efforts, Allah records every sincere intention with perfect justice and mercy. Over time, secret worship transforms the heart into a place of sincerity, will, humility, and unwavering faith. It removes the noise of worldly expectations and replaces it with quiet devotion. The believer begins to prioritize Allah's pleasure above all else, finding comfort in being unknown among people but known to the Lord of the worlds. In these unseen moments, faith becomes authentic, intentions become pure, and worship reaches a depth that public recognition can never achieve. One of the greatest spiritual dangers a believer faces is the hidden disease of showing off, known as Riya. It is subtle, quiet, and often enters the heart without notice. A person may begin an act of worship sincerely, but the moment they become aware that others are watching, the intention can slowly shift. Instead of seeking only Allah's pleasure, the heart starts desiring admiration, respect, or praise. Secret worship becomes a powerful protection against this spiritual illness because it removes the audience entirely and allows worship to remain purely between the servant and Allah. Riya does not always appear in obvious forms. It can hide behind good actions. A person may lengthen their prayer when others are present, speak more beautifully about faith in gatherings, or feel pleased when people recognize their religious commitment. Even the desire to be known as a righteous person can influence intentions. Islam teaches that actions are judged by intentions, and when intention becomes mixed with the desire for recognition, the spiritual value of the deed decreases. Secret worship acts like a cleansing process that constantly renews sincerity. When worship is hidden, there is no opportunity for the ego to seek validation. The believer prays knowing that no human being will ever know how long they stood before Allah. They give charity without attaching their name to it. They make dua silently without announcing their struggles. These acts train the heart to detach from people's opinions and focus solely on divine acceptance. Over time, the believer begins to realize that human praise is temporary while Allah's acceptance is eternal. The human ego naturally loves attention. It enjoys compliments and feels satisfied when admired. This is part of human nature, but it becomes dangerous when it interferes with worship. Secret worship weakens the influence of the ego by denying it the recognition it seeks. When no praise follows an act of worship, the soul learns to continue doing good without emotional rewards from people. This discipline strengthens spiritual maturity and develops humility. Another benefit of hidden worship is that it creates honesty within the believer. Public worship can sometimes create pressure to appear more righteous than one truly feels. A person may fear judgment or criticism and therefore display only their strongest religious side in public. Secret worship removes this pressure and allows genuine communication with Allah. In private moments, the believer admits weaknesses, fears, sins, and struggles without pretending perfection. This honesty leads to sincere repentance and deeper spiritual growth. The Prophet Muhammad, Arabic Sada, Arabic Lam, Arabic Alif Maksura, Arabic Alif, Arabic Lam, 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 Arabic Meme, warned about the dangers of Riya because it can quietly destroy good deeds. A person may spend years performing acts of worship, yet if the intention becomes tied to people's approval, the reward may diminish. Secret worship safeguards deeds from being corrupted. Hidden acts remain untouched by pride because they were never performed for recognition. The believer begins to treasure these unseen actions more than public achievements because they feel spiritually safer. Secret worship also teaches self-accountability. When a person worships privately, they are no longer motivated by social expectations. They pray because they truly want to pray, not because others expect it from them. They read Quran because their heart seeks guidance, not because it enhances their image. This internal motivation strengthens faith in a way that external pressure cannot. The believer develops discipline rooted in love and devotion rather than reputation. Avoiding Riya requires constant awareness because the heart can change quickly. Even after performing a sincere deed, the desire to mention it later can arise. The believer might feel tempted to share their charity, sacrifices, or acts of devotion. Secret worship trains the heart to resist this urge. Silence becomes an act of worship itself. Choosing not to speak about good deeds protects them from pride and preserves their spiritual reward. Hidden worship also nurtures contentment. When actions are done for people, disappointment often follows if appreciation is not received. A person may feel hurt when their efforts go unnoticed or unrecognized. But when worship is done solely for Allah, the believer finds peace regardless of people's reactions. Satisfaction comes from knowing that Allah sees every effort, even when the world remains unaware. There is also a profound psychological benefit in protecting oneself. From Riya. Living for people's approval creates anxiety because public opinion constantly changes. Today people may praise, tomorrow they may criticize. Secret worship frees the believer from this emotional instability. Their worth is no longer tied to reputation but to their relationship with Allah. This creates inner stability and emotional strength. Another aspect of secret worship is that it cultivates modesty in righteousness. The believer stops competing for recognition in religious matters. Instead of comparing deeds with others, they focus on improving their personal connection with Allah. This reduces jealousy and arrogance while increasing compassion toward fellow believers. A person who practices hidden worship understands that true righteousness is not measured by visibility but by sincerity. The struggle against Riya is lifelong because the heart continuously fluctuates. Secret worship becomes a daily spiritual exercise that renews intention again and again. Each private prayer, silent remembrance, or hidden act of kindness becomes a reminder that worship belongs to Allah alone. The believer learns to question their intentions regularly, seeking purity rather than praise. Over time, the heart begins to prefer anonymity in good deeds. Recognition feels less important, and sincerity becomes more valuable. The believer experiences a unique closeness to Allah because their worship is no longer influenced by social expectations. They act sincerely whether seen or unseen, praised or ignored, supported or criticized. This consistency strengthens faith and protects deeds from spiritual Arabic noon, Arabic kaf, Arabic sada, Arabic kalif, Arabic noon. Through secret worship, the believer learns that the greatest honor is not being admired by people but being accepted by Allah. Hidden deeds become shields against hypocrisy, guards against pride, and sources of spiritual security. Every unseen act strengthens the heart's devotion and reinforces the understanding that true success lies in pleasing Allah alone rather than seeking admiration from creation. A strong personal connection with Allah is not built only through public acts of worship or moments shared with others, but through private encounters where the heart speaks honestly and openly to its Creator. Secret worship allows the believer to develop this intimate relationship in a way that no public gathering can replicate. When a person stands alone in prayer, raises their hands in silent supplication, or remembers Allah quietly during ordinary moments of life, they are seeking guidance, comfort, or solace from Allah. They enter a space where distractions disappear and the soul reconnects directly with its source of peace. In private worship, there is no performance. The believer does not worry about how their voice sounds, how long they stand, or how others perceive their devotion. The focus shifts entirely toward Allah. This sincerity transforms worship into a conversation rather than a routine. The heart begins to speak freely, expressing gratitude, fear, hope, regret, and longing without hesitation. These moments become deeply personal because they are free from judgment and expectation. One of the most powerful examples of secret worship is prayer during the night when the world is silent. Waking up while others sleep requires effort and sacrifice, but it carries a special spiritual sweetness. In those quiet hours, the believer feels closer to Allah because distractions are minimal and the heart is more present. The darkness of the night creates an atmosphere of reflection where worries, dreams and struggles are placed before Allah with sincerity. These private prayers often become the moments when faith feels most alive. Secret worship teaches the believer that Allah is always near, even when no one else understands their struggles. Many people carry burdens they cannot share with others' personal fears, hidden pain, unanswered questions, or silent battles within the heart. Private supplication allows them to release these emotions without fear of misunderstanding. They realize that Allah listens to every whisper, every unspoken thought, and every tear shed in solitude. This awareness builds deep emotional reliance on Allah rather than dependence on human reassurance. As the believer continues hidden acts of worship, they begin to experience spiritual companionship with Allah. Loneliness decreases because the heart no longer feels abandoned. Even when physically alone, the believer feels seen, heard, and supported. This connection strengthens resilience during difficult times because faith becomes a living relationship rather than an abstract belief. Worship stops feeling like an obligation and starts becoming a source of comfort. Private remembrance of Allah also transforms daily life. A believer may quietly say words of the dhikr while walking, working, or resting. These small hidden moments keep the heart spiritually awake throughout the day. Instead of limiting worship to specific times or places, the believer carries awareness of Allah into every aspect of life. Ordinary actions become meaningful because they are accompanied by remembrance and intention. Secret worship also allows honesty in repentance. In public, people often hesitate to show vulnerability or admit mistakes. But in private, the believer can acknowledge sins openly before Allah. Tears of regret flow without embarrassment and sincere repentance becomes possible. This process cleanses the heart and renews hope. The believer understands that Allah's mercy is vast and that no mistake is too great to be forgiven when repentance is genuine. The intimacy created through hidden worship nurtures love for Allah. Love grows through consistent communication and closeness. Just as relationships between people deepen through private conversations and shared moments, the believer's relationship with Allah strengthens through personal acts of devotion. Over time, the heart begins to miss these moments when they are absent. Prayer, dua, and remembrance become spiritual necessities, rather than responsibilities. Another benefit of secret worship is that it helps the believer recognize Allah's presence in subtle ways. When someone regularly turns to Allah privately, they become more aware of blessings, guidance, and protection in their life. Small moments begin to feel meaningful. A difficulty that suddenly eases, a prayer that finds unexpected acceptance, or a feeling of calm during hardship becomes a reminder that Allah responds to sincere hearts. This awareness deepens trust and strengthens faith. Secret worship also builds emotional stability. Life contains uncertainty, disappointment, and change, but a strong connection with Allah provides a constant source of grounding. The believer learns to turn to Allah first, rather than relying solely on people or circumstances. This habit reduces anxiety because the heart finds reassurance in divine wisdom. Even when situations remain unresolved, the believer feels comfort knowing that Allah understands every detail. Through private worship, the believer discovers authenticity in faith. They no longer practice religion only in visible settings but live it internally. Their relationship with Allah exists beyond public identity or social expectations. This authenticity creates spiritual integrity, where actions align with belief regardless of who is watching. Hidden acts of worship also increase mindfulness. The believer becomes more conscious of their thoughts, intentions, and behavior because they are constantly aware of Allah's presence. This awareness encourages kindness, patience, and self-control. Knowing that Allah sees every action inspires moral consistency even when no external accountability exists. Over time, secret worship transforms the believer's understanding of closeness to Allah. It is no longer defined by outward recognition or visible religiosity, but by sincerity and presence of heart. The believer learns that true connection with Allah happens in moments unseen by the world, where faith grows quietly but powerfully within the soul. These private encounters become the foundation upon which all other acts of worship stand, nurturing a relationship rooted in love, trust, humility. And constant remembrance of the one who is always near secret deeds carry a unique weight in the sight of Allah because they reflect the purest form of faith. When a believer performs an act of worship without seeking recognition, they are demonstrating their faith and commitment to the cause. The action becomes free from worldly motives and directed entirely toward divine pleasure. Hidden worship demonstrates that a person's devotion is not dependent on being seen or praised. It shows sincerity that exists even when there is no audience, no acknowledgement, and no immediate reward visible in this world. This purity elevates the value of secret deeds and makes them immensely beloved to Allah. One of the reasons hidden worship carries greater reward is that it requires stronger intention. Public good deeds can sometimes be supported by encouragement from others, community spirit, or social expectation. Secret worship, however, relies solely on internal motivation. A believer chooses to pray extra units of prayer alone, gives charity anonymously, or remembers Allah quietly during private moments because their heart genuinely seeks closeness to Him. The effort involved in maintaining sincerity when no one is watching increases the spiritual value of the deed. Hidden acts of worship also involve sacrifice. Waking up at night to pray requires overcoming sleep and comfort. Giving charity secretly may mean letting go of recognition that could enhance one's reputation. Forgiving someone privately without announcing it requires emotional strength. These sacrifices reflect true devotion because they are made purely for Allah. The believer willingly gives up worldly acknowledgement in exchange for unseen reward, demonstrating deep trust in Allah's promise of recompense. The concept of unseen reward strengthens faith in the will. Unseen itself. Islam teaches belief in realities beyond human perception, including angels recording deeds and rewards prepared in the hereafter. Secret worship aligns perfectly with this belief. The believer performs good actions knowing that Allah records every intention and effort even when no human witness exists. This awareness nurtures certainty that divine justice is perfect and that no sincere deed is ever lost. Hidden worship also protects deeds from being diminished by pride. Public praise can unintentionally affect the heart, leading a person to feel superior or satisfied with their righteousness. When deeds remain hidden, they stay spiritually protected. The believer continues to feel humble because there is no external validation reinforcing ego or self-importance. This humility preserves the reward of the action and allows the believer to continue striving for improvement rather than becoming complacent. Another aspect that increases the reward of secret worship is consistency. Hidden deeds are often small but regular. A person may quietly recite Quran daily, make sincere dua after every prayer, or give small amounts of charity consistently without anyone knowing. These steady acts build a strong spiritual foundation. Allah loves deeds that are consistent even if they appear small. And hidden worship encourages this consistency because it is driven by personal commitment rather than public attention. Secret deeds also demonstrate sincerity during hardship. When life becomes difficult, public acts of worship may decrease due to emotional exhaustion or lack of support. However, believers who maintain private worship continue turning to Allah regardless of circumstances. Their hidden prayers during moments of sadness, fear, or uncertainty carry immense reward because they arise from genuine reliance on Allah. These moments reflect authentic faith that persists even when strength feels limited. The reward of secret worship extends beyond the hereafter into the believer's present life. Many scholars have explained that hidden good deeds become sources of unseen blessings. A person may experience unexpected ease, protection from harm, or peace of heart without fully understanding the reason. Secret acts of devotion invite divine mercy in ways that may not always be visible but are deeply felt. The believer learns that sincere worship creates spiritual light that influences every aspect of life. Hidden charity is a powerful example of reward multiplied through sincerity. When charity is given secretly, the dignity of the recipient is preserved and the giver's intention remains pure. There is no desire for gratitude or recognition, only a wish to please Allah and help another human being. This purity enhances the reward because the action benefits both the giver and the recipient spiritually and emotionally. Secret worship also teaches patience regarding reward. In a world driven by immediate results, hidden deeds train the believer to to work for rewards that may only become fully apparent in the hereafter. This patience strengthens faith and reduces attachment to worldly outcomes. The believer becomes motivated by eternal success rather than temporary acknowledgement. Another reason hidden deeds carry immense reward is that they reflect genuine fear and love of Allah. A person who refrains from sin in private remembers Allah when alone or performs acts of worship without supervision demonstrates true consciousness of Allah's presence. This awareness is a sign of deep faith because the believer behaves righteously even when free from human accountability. Secret worship also accumulates spiritual treasures unknown even to the believer themselves. On the day of judgment, when people search desperately for good deeds, hidden acts performed sincerely may appear as unexpected sources of salvation. These deeds remain preserved because they were never exposed to corruption through pride or insincerity. The believer may have forgotten them, but Allah never forgets. Over time, the understanding of reward changes for the believer. Worship is no longer about recognition, numbers, or comparison with others. It becomes about quality, sincerity, and closeness to Allah. Hidden deeds nurture this perspective, teaching that the most valuable actions are often those unseen by the world. The believer begins to prioritize private devotion, knowing that Allah values sincerity over visibility and intention over appearance. Through secret worship, faith becomes deeper, reward becomes greater, and the relationship with Allah grows stronger through acts performed solely for His pleasure. Difficult times reveal the true strength of a believer's faith, and one of the greatest sources of inner resilience comes from maintaining secret worship. When life becomes heavy with trials, losses, disappointments, or uncertainty, public strength often fades, but private devotion becomes a refuge. Secret worship builds a spiritual foundation long before hardship arrives, allowing the believer to stand firm when tested. The connection developed through hidden acts of worship becomes a quiet source of stability that supports the heart when everything else feels unstable. Every person experiences moments when solutions seem distant and answers feel delayed. During such periods, reliance on people or worldly means alone can lead to frustration and emotional exhaustion. Secret worship redirects the believer toward Allah as the ultimate source of relief. When someone regularly turns to Allah in private prayer, silent remembrance, or heartfelt supplication, they are seeking a connection with the divine. They develop a habit of seeking divine support rather than surrendering to despair. This habit transforms hardship into an opportunity for spiritual closeness. Private worship strengthens patience because it nurtures trust in Allah's wisdom. A believer who frequently engages in hidden acts of devotion learns to accept that not every difficulty is a punishment. Many trials are forms of purification, growth, and elevation. Secret conversations with Allah allow the believer to express confusion, pain, and longing honestly. These moments of vulnerability soften the heart and replace frustration with surrender. Instead of asking why hardship exists, the believer begins asking how to respond with faith. One of the greatest challenges during difficult times is maintaining hope. Human beings naturally seek reassurance from others, yet people cannot always understand or carry another person's burden. Secret worship provides reassurance directly from Allah. A quiet dua made in solitude can restore hope in ways that words from people cannot. The believer feels heard even without speaking aloud, understood even without explanation. This sense of divine companionship reduces feelings of isolation and strengthens emotional endurance. Hidden worship also builds emotional discipline. Trials often provoke strong reactions such as anger, fear, sadness, or impatience. Regular private worship trains the believer to pause and turn toward Allah before reacting impulsively. A person who has developed the habit of secret remembrance learns to calm their heart through prayer and reflection. This discipline allows them to face challenges with wisdom rather than panic, maintaining dignity even during hardship. Another powerful effect of secret worship during difficult times is the strengthening of reliance on Allah alone. When worldly support weakens or disappears, the believer realizes that Allah's support never fails. Hidden prayers offered during moments of desperation become anchors that prevent spiritual collapse. The believer learns that true strength does not come from controlling circumstances, but from trusting the one who controls all circumstances. Secret worship also helps believers process grief and disappointment. Many pains cannot be fully shared with others, either because they are too personal or too difficult to. Will explain. Private supplication allows emotions to be released safely. Tears shed in solitude become acts of worship themselves, reflecting humility and sincere dependence on Allah. These moments cleanse the heart and prevent emotional burdens from turning into bitterness or resentment. During hardship, faith can either weaken or deepen depending on how a believer responds. Those who maintain secret worship often experience spiritual growth through trials. Their patience increases, their perspective expands, and their appreciation for blessings becomes stronger. Difficulties begin to feel meaningful rather than meaningless because they are connected to a greater spiritual purpose. Secret worship transforms suffering into a pathway toward closeness with Allah. Hidden acts of devotion also protect believers from losing hope when results are delayed. Many prayers are answered in ways that are not immediately visible. A person who regularly turns to Allah privately develops certainty that every sincere supplication is heard, even if the response unfolds gradually. This certainty reduces anxiety and allows the believer to continue striving without losing faith. Secret worship during ease prepares the believer for resilience during hardship. Just as physical strength develops through consistent training, spiritual strength grows through consistent devotion. A heart accustomed to remembering Allah in peaceful times naturally turns to Him during storms. The believer does not need to learn reliance on Allah during hardship because that reliance already exists. Another benefit of hidden worship is the sense of peace it brings amidst chaos. External situations may remain difficult, but internal tranquility grows. The believer may still face challenges, yet their heart remains calm because it is connected to Allah. This peace becomes a form of strength that allows them to continue fulfilling responsibilities, supporting others, and maintaining hope despite adversity. Secret worship also reminds the believer that trials are temporary, while Allah's mercy is everlasting. Private moments of reflection help them recognize that hardships come and go, but faith remains constant. This perspective prevents despair and encourages perseverance. The believer understands that every difficulty carries potential reward when faced with patience and trust. Over time, secret worship shapes a believer into someone spiritually resilient. Challenges no longer destroy faith but refine it. Pain becomes a teacher rather than an enemy, guiding the believer toward deeper reliance on Allah. The private relationship developed through hidden worship becomes a sanctuary where strength is renewed again and again, allowing the believer to walk through life's trials with hope, patience, and unwavering trust in Allah's wisdom and mercy. Hidden worship carries with it a mysterious beauty because many of its rewards appear in ways that are not immediately recognized. When a believer performs good deeds secretly, those actions often become a source of unseen blessings that quietly influence every part of life. These blessings may not always arrive in dramatic or obvious forms, yet they manifest through ease in difficulties, protection from harm, peace within the heart, and opportunities that open unexpectedly. Secret worship plants seeds that grow beneath the surface, producing outcomes known only to Allah. One of the most remarkable aspects of hidden worship is that it invites divine care into a believer's life. When someone consistently turns to Allah in private, gives charity anonymously, or remembers Him without seeking attention, they demonstrate sincerity that attracts Allah's mercy. These acts become reasons for Allah's assistance in moments when the believer may not even realize they are being protected. A difficulty may be removed before it reaches them. A harmful situation may be avoided, or guidance may come at the exact moment it is needed. Hidden blessings will often appear as ease in matters that should have been difficult. A believer may find solutions appearing unexpectedly, hearts becoming soft toward them, or obstacles resolving without struggle. While others may attribute such outcomes to coincidence, the believer understands that secret devotion carries spiritual consequences. Allah rewards sincerity not only in the hereafter, but also by placing barakah in time, effort, relationships, and daily experiences. Secret worship also nurtures inner peace, one of the greatest hidden blessings a person can receive. In a world filled with comparison, competition, and constant noise, the believer who maintains private devotion develops a calm heart. They are less affected by people's opinions because their satisfaction comes from Allah's awareness of their efforts. This inner tranquility allows them to navigate challenges with balance and emotional stability. Even when external circumstances are imperfect, the heart feels content. Another hidden blessing of secret worship is protection from spiritual harm. Just as physical dangers exist, spiritual dangers such as arrogance, envy, and heedlessness threaten the believer's faith. Hidden acts of worship act like spiritual shields, strengthening the heart against these influences. A person who remembers Allah privately remains more aware of right and wrong, making wiser decisions and avoiding situations that could harm their faith. Secret charity is a powerful example of blessings that multiply quietly. When charity is given without recognition, it strengthens compassion and humility while protecting the dignity of those receiving help. Allah promises that charity does not decrease wealth, and hidden charity often brings unexpected provision. The believer may notice financial ease, contentment with what they have, or opportunities for sustenance appearing in ways they did not anticipate. These outcomes remind them that generosity done sincerely invites divine generosity in return. Hidden worship also brings blessings into relationships. A person who secretly prays for others, forgives quietly, and wishes good for people without seeking acknowledgement often experiences harmony in their interactions. Hearts incline toward them naturally because sincerity radiates through character. Respect, love, and trust grow without effort, becoming silent rewards for sincere devotion. Another form of hidden blessing is clarity of heart. Regular secret worship refines a believer's intentions and strengthens spiritual insight. They become more aware of what truly matters in life. Material success and public recognition lose their overwhelming importance, replaced by a desire for meaning and closeness to Allah. This clarity helps them make decisions aligned with faith and long-term spiritual success rather than temporary satisfaction. Hidden worship also prepares unseen rewards for the future. Some blessings may not appear immediately but unfold gradually over time. A dua made in will. Secrecy may be answered years later in a form far better than expected. A moment of patience shown privately may become the reason for relief during a later hardship. The believer learns that nothing done for Allah is ever wasted, even when results remain hidden for long periods. One of the most comforting aspects of secret worship is the knowledge that Allah responds to sincerity even when human efforts go unnoticed. Many people feel unappreciated or overlooked in life, yet hidden devotion reassures the believer that true recognition comes from Allah alone. This understanding removes bitterness and replaces it with gratitude. The believer continues doing good not for acknowledgement, but for the joy of pleasing Allah. Hidden blessings also include spiritual strength during moments of weakness. When challenges arise, believers who maintain secret worship often find unexpected patience and resilience within themselves. Strength appears when needed because they have a private relationship with Allah has already nourished their faith. The heart remains hopeful even when circumstances are uncertain. Secret worship teaches the believer to trust in unseen outcomes. They learn to perform good deeds without demanding immediate results, confident that Allah's wisdom governs every reward. This trust develops deep reliance on Allah and frees the believer from constant anxiety about worldly success. They focus on effort while leaving outcomes in Allah's hands. Over time, the believer begins to notice that life feels guided in subtle ways. Opportunities align, harmful paths are avoided, and moments of comfort appear during hardship. These experiences strengthen faith and reinforce the belief that hidden worship brings hidden mercy. The believer understands that the most valuable blessings are not always visible to others, but are deeply felt within the soul and reflected in a life filled with quiet divine care, unseen protection and continuous spiritual nourishment that flows from acts known only to Allah.